Today's video is sponsored by Ticket, the ultimate AI augmented service management solution for Microsoft Teams. Visit them today at ticket.ai. Well, like all good salespeople, AI has definitely sold the dream, but we've definitely had to live the reality. AI is everywhere and you can't avoid it, but in this episode we're going to show you what happens if you don't secure your data in the cloud. It could be a nightmare. You know, there's an old saying that's absolutely true. You don't get anything in this world for free. Well, apart from my training, of course. You know what I mean? Hey, listen, welcome to the episode. We're talking AI today. Now, AI, fantastic as it is, comes in a number of different versions. So if you're using Chat GPT, if you're using the Microsoft Copilot services, if you're using Google, if you're using Apple Intelligence, all of these sound absolutely wonderful. But there's one thing that you really need to take into account. What's it doing with your data? Now, in the personal space, you might not be worried about that. But in the corporate space, you do really need to protect on what's potentially leaking outside of your organization. So in this episode, I'm going to give you a nice list of the do's and the don'ts when it comes to protecting yourselves and your organization using AI. And we've got some really good practical tips, so definitely stick around to the end. I guarantee this will be one episode worth watching. Now, if you haven't subscribed, I'd love for you to come on board. So bump that subscribe button up there, ring the bell, and come and join my learning community. And if you've got questions and comments, by all means, get those down below, and I'll always do my best for you. And if you'd like a little bit more, why not subscribe to my Patreon site? Here you'll get access to full Microsoft courses, monthly Zoom calls, and so much more. Okay, so without any further ado, I think it's about time we jump in and take a look at the dangers of AI and not being prepared for it. Check this out. So as you can see, AI is simply everywhere. Copilot is fully integrated into Microsoft 365, whether you want it or not. Coming into Chat GPT, of course, it's fully here. And the scary thing is here, you can now upload files from your computer and even OneDrive, both personal and corporate here. We'll be talking about that in a minute. And also how you can connect to another Google Drive, for example. So that's a little bit concerning. But what is concerning is when you look at ChatGPT's privacy policy or OpenAI's privacy policy, which basically says, hey, if you're using the free service, you know, all your data is available and it will be used to train any kind of AI agent. So you've got to really watch out for that. Now, using, of course, the likes of Google Gemini, again, fantastic tool, really helps with productivity. But if you're not going with the paid solutions, then you are at the mercy of this terms and conditions agreement, which is quite lengthy and basically says that, you know, anything that you use, anything that you input, and this can include your camera, your voice, anything that you type in, will be used to potentially train the model as well. So again, be super, super careful with this because it could get you into a lot of trouble. So with that, now let's take a look at what we can do in order to protect ourselves. So for the organization, the problems start very early on when the user tries to connect here and connect to the user's OneDrive. Now, bearing in mind that this is the free version of ChatGPT, which is great. Sometimes it's a little limited, but the key thing is once you click onto that school and workplace join, just look at the permissions that you're giving ChatGPT. And if you accept this, it makes it even worse, by the way, you can consent on behalf of the organization. So this is something from an admin perspective that we definitely don't want. So there are two ways that you can potentially deal with this. First of all, in the Entra Admin Center, if you come into the Applications blade and then come down into Enterprise Applications, you'll notice in here that we have a section here on consent and permissions. Now, with that, you have the control to prevent users from installing or deploying applications that require that OAuth consent. So you can see here, do not allow user consent. So an admin will be required to set that up. And you'll need to set that up here. Allow user consent, but from trusted publishers. And you can also allow the consent for apps, just straightforward. So if you switched on, let's say, let me choose this one and let me just save this. This is now really going to restrict what apps users can run and install. That anything that requires OAuth consent, it's not going to be possible. So you could come into the admin consent settings. Users can request admin consent if they are unable to consent to, and you can say, yes, that's fine. But we now have different users and different groups that you can set up, but also different roles as well. So if you're doing that with admin roles. Selected users will receive emails. That's fine. You can do that. And also you can request expiration requirements. Now, a good thing about this is you can also customize this as well. So anything that requires, fairly low level consent, you can say, hey, these permissions I'm going to be okay with. Medium level consent and also high level consent. For me personally, though, this feels a little bit like hitting a nail on the head with a sledgehammer. Or whatever you do, I think you need to plan this one carefully. So, like I said, I always felt that was a little bit like hitting a nail on a head. So another solution, if you have this, of course, this is EM&S, Enterprise Mobility and Security, and an E5 subscription, then you'll have access to Defender for CloudApps. So with Defender for CloudApps here, you can come in and you can go into OAuth apps. You can either go into OAuth apps or you can come into app governance here. So in app governance, you can essentially govern the use of apps within your environment. So I'm going to click here into policies. And the first thing to note is, do you have any apps that are overprivileged? And this can be really useful for that. So again, you can come in here and this is a great tool for preventing users from installing those risky apps, or at least being able to see what they're doing, which is really great, by the way. So this next one is super important, by the way. So as an admin, one of the things you want to prevent is users from taking out subscriptions. So you can come in here, go into organization settings from the settings pane. And if you just scroll right down and you'll see self-service trials and purchases, simply come in here and you can see these are all the different trials and subscriptions that your users can take out. And of course, the Microsoft 365 Copilot service is here. Now you can see you can allow users can take out a trial to either trial or buy the product. And already, if they've got the authority to do that, your credit card bill could be going through the roof. You can allow trials only, or you can just simply say do not allow. So maybe you're just not ready for it, but super useful that you can do that. And then that essentially prevents your users from taking out those trials. So what are some of the things that you can do to prevent data from leaking outside your organization? Well, you can come in here to Microsoft Purview in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, or if you go to purview.microsoft.com. First up, you'll go into the solutions, and I want to show you a couple of topics. First of all, information protection and data loss prevention, or as I call it, data leakage prevention. And these can be combined actually quite cleverly. But before you implement any of these tools, it's super important to know if actually you do have any sensitive data in your system. So to find out this, you can come into information protection, and we have this area here called Explorers. And if you click onto the Data Explorers, I love this. The fact that for compliance reasons, I can see at a glance exactly what sensitive information I have. Now, of course, if you let AI and Copilot and Chat GPT access to all of your data, there is a real risk that this PII could potentially leak out and be used to train potentially these models. So starting in all the locations here, what I want to do is I want to come in and, let's say, for example, have a look at Microsoft Exchange. And first of all, you can see all the mailboxes here for your organization. And alongside that, you can see how many occurrences of personally identifiable information there is. So things like credit card numbers, tax numbers, and so on. Again, this could cause you all kinds of issues. So again, I can see all the 24 different categories. So you can see right away that there are 17 mailboxes that have got, for example, credit card numbers in them. Now, if I want to check out this or have a look at social security numbers, of course, first of all, make sure that you've got the appropriate permissions. And then I'm simply going to click onto credit card numbers. And again, you can see now whose mailboxes. So for example, I've got a user here called Grady, and you can see that there's one occurrence in each of these mailboxes where credit card numbers actually take effect. So I can even click onto that mailbox and it will actually take me to the content. So it will show me that in Grady's mailbox, there is indeed one email, and again, customer purchasing. So I can click into that. And of course, if you have the rights, then now you can see you can actually open up that email and view it. We can actually determine, look, hey, we do have sensitive information in our environment. So what can we do about it? Well, first of all, we need to think about data loss or data leakage. And you can do this in a couple of ways. So sensitivity labels, again, super important that organizations classify their data. Now in here, we've got sensitivity labels, and you start with a number of kind of default ones that Microsoft give you, but you can come in and you can create your own labels. So for example, I've created a group here called Edinburgh HR. So I could call this my Edinburgh Confidential, for example. So again, I can simply just copy that, paste that into these fields here, and you can even set the priority of the label as well. You can also choose a color scheme. So this being confidential, you might want it to be red. And you can see that it says what you want to protect: file and other users' assets, emails, meetings. If you've got things like Teams Premium, you can actually prioritize and label chats as well. Things like groups and sites, really important. So again, I'm going to say, yep, I want all of those. I want to control access and apply content marking. And also I want to protect Teams and chats. Now, at the moment, I don't have that license set up. So you can see that this is actually not working at the moment. But you would need Teams Premium license for that to work. So I'm now just going to click in. Do I want to apply the permissions now? I do. And do I want the content to expire? Do I want to allow offline access? Again, you might think, actually, no, this is sensitive information. I don't want my users to be able to copy. I only want them to be able to view that data online. And you can set the permissions for all users, authenticated users, specific users and groups. So for example, I could click into these specific users and groups here, and I could type in Edinburgh. And of course, I have this group called Edinburgh, and I'm going to say add, and I'll choose the permissions. And of course, these are essentially SharePoint permissions. So I'm just going to choose the editor permissions here. You can also customize these as well, of course. I'm going to click on save, and I'm just going to click next. Do I want to apply content marking, for example, a watermark across the document, a header, or in this case, I'll do a footer on the left-hand side in black ink, and I'll say the size is size 12. And again, I'll just paste that Edinburgh Confidential in, and that would now appear on every document. This is where DLP comes in, or data loss prevention. Now, if you have plan 1, so if you've got business premium or an E3 plan, this is plan 1, this means you can do manual labeling. But if you have plan 2, you can enable auto labeling, and in essence, this is data loss prevention policies, and it's how you can combine them. And you can set conditions here, and you can say, does the content contain, and again, I could say, for example, a sensitive information type. And this is all the different types of sensitive information. So, for example, I could come down here and I could say, yeah, if it contains US Social Security number, I might say, taxpayer information, things like credit card, account numbers, passport numbers. This is all PII potentially. So I'm going to say, yeah, add this. And again, you can add more as well. I'll click next. And do you want to provide access or privacy to external access, external sharing? Again, I've not got the Teams at the moment, so that's fine. So basically anything with a label, I don't want this going out being shared, so I want it private. And I don't want to allow users to be able to share this outside the organization. I do want to control external sharing. So even if your default external sharing is for anyone, the problem with that, of course, is even guests could share your data. So what I want to do is I just actually want to say, I don't want only people in my organization to be able to view this. So now that I've created that label, this is an auto label policy. So basically, anytime anybody puts in a social security number or anything like that, it will automatically publish the label. Now, you can say, I want it to automatically apply the label to this content, publish the label to users' apps, or if you already have policies, you can actually say, don't publish this, and then add it manually into a policy that you've created. But I want to automatically use this label. And again, you can see it's determined the classifiers. I've gone through all of those rules, and now off it goes, and it creates that policy for me. Okay, absolutely awesome. Now, if you had chosen a manual label policy, okay, again, I'm just going to create that. By the way, it's always a good idea when you're creating policies or anything like that, create it to one user, test the policy, and then expand on that. The other thing that we've got here is you've also got manual label policies. So again, for example, if I publish that policy, or if I hadn't published the label, what you could do is you could come in to edit the policy manually, and I could then add in that additional label manually. So you can customize these labels. Just to say that if you hadn't done an automated policy, then users would have to set this up manually. So to do that, the user would simply come back into their Microsoft 365 account. Let's say that this is the document they want to work on. So this is in Microsoft Word. I will just close that down here. You can see up here that we have a sensitivity option. So I can simply click on the drop down arrow and I could say, yep, I want this to be confidential, and I could say recipients only. And you can see here now that we've now added that sensitivity label in. So as I said, multiple ways to distribute this. You can either do it manually, which of course would involve quite a bit of training on your behalf of your people, or you can do it automated. So super important data loss prevention policies and information protection combined in Microsoft 365 Purview. So there you have it. I hope you're a little bit wiser in using AI and, more importantly, preparing your organization to actually integrate it. That's it for this time. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember, if you've not subscribed, you know what to do. And if you've got questions and comments, get those down below and I'll always do my best for you. Okay, that's it for this week. You stay safe. I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.